So what happens when the market shifts the way that it has over the last 5 years? There's been a lot of changes in our market over the last 5 years. We've had to make a lot of adjustments, both on the buying and selling side of the transaction. So I wanted to talk to you today about some of the things that I'm seeing in our local market here in southeastern North Carolina, working with buyers and sellers. I have a what I call a, or try to have what I call a balanced practice in real estate, and that means that I service both buyers and sellers. So I'm going to give you my opinion on what I'm seeing in the market based on my personal experience as a real estate agent. If we haven't met yet, my name is Sue Singleton. I am broker realtor at Carolina Coast Homes Real Estate here in beautiful southeastern North Carolina. And again, thank you for joining me today. So a lot of things have changed since the market in 2020. And it's brought about a lot of uncertainty as we travel into the market of today. And so I'll give you just a couple of examples. I made some notes here, so I'm going to refer to my notes because I want to make sure I get all of this information in this video because I think it's very, very important information to have. So I'll just talk about a current listing appointment where we talked about prices in subdivisions. And that I'm finding is one confusing things for both buyers and sellers alike. And so let's just talk about a particular subdivision here in beautiful Brunswick County. And we're really close to the beach here, Oak Island. That's our primary beach area here from where I'm talking about. We're also very close to Holden Beach, Sunset Beach, Ocean Isle Beach, Calabash, all of those areas as well. Wilmington, North Carolina, Carolina Beach, Wrightsville Beach. So we have a lot of diverse properties all along the southeastern North Carolina coastal area. And so recently, just within the last week, I was talking to a seller, and we were talking about the market conditions just in the subdivision that they live in. And it is one of the subdivisions that we have seen so many of in our particular area, where during the housing crash back in the 2000s, it kind of went dormant for a while. There was a new construction every now and then where somebody was maybe doing a private build on a property or on a lot, but not a whole lot going on. And then, everything just kind of stopped, and then we kind of worked back up to 2020. And things had started picking up a little bit. We were seeing, a little bit more construction in some of these communities prior to COVID in 2020. But then all of a sudden, COVID happened, and then everything went crazy, right? Everything went crazy with the housing prices. Everything went crazy with the interest rates. It was just a crazy time. So that we get fast forward through COVID, we're back here in 2025, and the market has kind of done an adjustment. It's gone back to what a lot of us in real estate call a more neutral, a more market, a more normal market of what we were used to prior to COVID. But for this particular community, there's been a lot of new developments as well. And so what that means is you've got a lot of new construction going on in the community. You also have a lot of the homes that were actually built back in, let's say, maybe the 2006, 2007, 2008 era before the actual market crash or the housing crash. And so, but what we're seeing in some of these communities is that we have builders that are coming in and they're building, good homes, good quality homes, and they're smaller homes per se than the homes that are in the community already. They still fall within the guidelines of what the communities allow, but they're smaller homes. A lot of them are more what we would call maybe more of a cottage style home on a concrete slab, smaller space, some 2 bedrooms, some 3 bedrooms. Most of them do not have a bonus room or any type of study or anything over the garage that you can use additionally. They're just, pretty straight 2-3 bedrooms, one floor, somewhere around 1,500 square feet. And so what happens with that is a property that is being built now in those communities or in this particular community can be sold at a little lower price. So let's just say if you have a property that the current market value on for your property is $450,000 and a buyer coming in, maybe they can't go up to that price range, but they can go up to $400,000 price range, then those type of homes are going to be more appealing. And honestly, in this particular market that I'm seeing for a lot of these areas, those properties are going to go under contract a lot faster than a home that is much bigger. Let's just say, 2,000 square feet or above, and maybe the pricing on that particular property, excuse my tongue tidiness, on those particular types of property probably range somewhere between $450,000 to $500,000. Now I'm just talking about a particular community at this particular point. And so their property may be listed, but it's staying on the market a little bit longer because of the price range. And that's pretty common in a lot of communities that I'm seeing. And that could be any price range. That could be a price range where, let's just say that maybe your particular property could have a market value of, let's just say, $650,000. Your home's a little bit older. It could be 10 years old or less, 12 years old or less, somewhere along there. And a lot of the new construction are coming in, but let's say that the homes are a little bit smaller, but price point wise, they may be at $585,000. And that does have an impact on selling your property on the days on market. That doesn't mean that your house isn't going to sell somewhere in the market value range, maybe a little bit lower, could be a little bit higher, just depends on the market. It just means that your days on market is going to be a little bit longer as a seller. And that's something as a seller's agent that I do like to have that conversation with my sellers to say, listen, the days of 2 days on market is pretty much over. It's not saying that a property can't go under contract in 2 days once it goes active and it's available to the public. I'm just saying that in general, when we look at our days on market, if we look at our days on market now, let's just say like for Oak Island perhaps or Southport, we may be looking at days on market at around 60 days, whereas 5 years ago, that days on market might have been 10 days, right? So there's been a shift, there's been a change. But what happens is, as a seller, we do get accustomed to having our properties go on the market, get under contract really fast, and close really fast. And sometimes, you get sellers at that particular time were getting whatever kind of price really that they were wanting because it was a true seller's market, and buyers were anxious and they wanted to buy properties because the interest rate was low and there weren't a lot of properties that were being sold new construction or gently used homes, none of those. And so it was a seller's market. That was in 2000 going into 2021. But let's look at today's market. It's not that way. So we have an average days on market. Let's just, again, take the Southport area, the Oak Island area. We're looking around somewhere around 60 days on market. That's an average days on market. Does it mean your house is going to stay on there longer or it's going to stay on there shorter? It's just an average days on market. It's something to consider whenever we're looking at the days on market. And that is honestly, when I talk to that about two sellers, they really, when you can see it in their eyes, they're trying to process that information, because even though they know the market is a little bit different, sometimes a lot of sellers don't realize that it is an expanded period of time. Now, in today's terms, that expanded period of time is normal. It's what we see in a normal market. So in our market here, honestly, from everything that I see market-wise, everything I see talking to other agents, there's not a preference for a buyer or a seller. It's just more of a neutral type market. And that's not a bad thing. It's just that's where we're at. So then we look at the market from the eyes of the buyer. So we have a buyer coming in, just like as I was talking about in this particular subdivision, where maybe their budget is $450,000. And we're going in and we're looking at properties, and they're looking at gently used homes, maybe even looking at some older homes that may be 20 years old or older. But then we have all the new construction in those communities as well. Now, I want to say here that not everybody is looking for a new construction home. You know, I see a lot of people that are looking for new construction homes, but not everybody's looking for a new construction home. Some people really like the idea of buying an older home or a gently used home. And so, you know, you're still getting showings. You know, they may be a little bit slower at this particular time because we're just really getting into our season here in 2025, so to speak. But we're still getting showings. We're still getting people interested. We're still getting a lot of looks and views online. We're still getting all the things. But when they're going out and going to showings, a lot of these buyers want to get the most bang for their buck, depending on their personal financial situation. So they will look at gently used homes or some older homes, and they also want to look at new construction. And then they have to weigh what their needs are against what is available out there. Oftentimes new builders can make, in these subdivisions, they can make concessions to sellers that maybe to buyers, excuse me, concessions to buyers that a seller may not be able to make depending on their financial situation. They can offer incentives for using their particular services that their companies have that a seller may not be able to offer. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to buy, that you're not going to have a buyer for your property. So don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying there's a lot of different reasons why it may take a little bit longer for your home to sell in today's particular market. So we have to go into it at this period of time. Like again, we're in April 2025. Where as a seller, we do have to look at it a little bit differently and have that conversation. So if you're watching this video and you're a seller, make sure that you have a good conversation with your agent if you're interested in listing your home, so that your agent gives you the factual information about the market for your particular area. Now, a good agent should have that information available to you, and they should be giving that information to you so that you'll be prepared as a seller. But if you're talking to an agent and they don't bring that up, make sure to ask those questions. What is the average days on market? What are you seeing in your business as far as how many days are on the market? Are you seeing a lot of showings for your property at this particular time? What are you seeing as an agent in our local market? Those are the questions you want to ask your agent. And if you're a buyer, you kind of want to ask the same questions in a roundabout way, because as a buyer, you're looking at the current inventory that's on the market. You're seeing a home maybe that may be gently used or maybe 20 years old or so, but you want to still ask the agent those same questions. How many days has this home been on the property? How many days has this home been on the market? You know, they may say 60 days, they may say 240 days. Well, whatever the answer is, say, is that normal? Is that normal for this market? Is it normal to see homes on the market for 60 days? Is it normal to see a home on the market for 240 days? If the answer is yes, our market is suggesting 60 days is an average days on market. 240 days is a little bit long, but there may be some reasons why that property is still on the market. And you want to have the conversation with your agent. Why do you think that property is? I like the way that property looks. I like the location of that property. It's been on the market for 240 days. Why do you think the home has been on the market that long? Now, an agent may not readily know why a property has been on the market that long. There may be clues to the agent agent in the MLS as to why the properties have been on the market for that long. And sometimes it could just be a seller who has a set point for a price range on what they want to get for that property. And maybe that price range is realistic. Maybe that price range isn't realistic. It just depends on the property. It depends on the seller. It depends on a seller's goals. You know, a seller that is perhaps relocating for a job to another area, and they have a property here and their need to buy a property in the location they're moving to, their goal may be to sell their property more quickly. So they may be more, their goal may be to list their house at a different price point to kind of move the property along so that the property isn't on the market for a long time. So there's lots of different variables. There's lots of different reasons why a seller may have a property priced at a certain price range and why it's been on the market for a certain number of days. So again, just keep in mind here is September. On my mind this morning, right? Let me have a swallow of water. Okay. The price point for any seller in this market could be whatever reason. And the number of days on market, we want to look at the average days on market for the buyer and for the seller. So that's where we want to start at in the market here in April 2025. And so you do want to have that conversation with your agent. I can't stress enough, it's important that when you're having these conversations, doesn't matter if you're a seller, it doesn't matter if you're a buyer, you need to ask the questions. You need to let your real estate agent give you the information and kind of guide you where you need to go, but you also need to give information to your agent. You need to ask the questions of the agent so that you can make the best possible decision that is your decision and not the agent's decision, but your decision, so that you can make the best decision possible. Now, here's another thing that I also see in our particular market. And this is, everybody has mixed feelings about this. And, I'm going to give it to you from the seller side and the buyer side. So let's say that you have a property that is listed for $450,000. And that is in the market range for what we're seeing for properties like yours in your particular area that you're in here in Brunswick County, North Carolina. Then this may be in other markets as well, but I'm speaking specifically to our market here in Brunswick County, North Carolina. So your market value that you're seeing, your range, brings you up to say, okay, $450,000 is a good spot for us to list our house. So you and your agent agree, your listing agent gets it online, everybody's seeing it, it's going to all the different places that it goes to when you list a property. Your agent gets a call. Oh, we saw the property and we're going to send you an offer. Your agent, as the seller's agent, gets the offer, and you listed your house for $450,000. It's been on the market. Let's say it's been on the market for 30 days, and they make an offer of $399,000 below the $400,000 range. And oftentimes, because that's a huge difference between $450 to $399, depending on the market, if it's not overpriced, that's a huge difference. And so we often call those lowball offers. And sometimes we have buyers, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, and I'm not judging it. I'm just giving you the factual information. Sometimes a buyer will say, well, that's where I want to start at, and I want to see what sticks. I just want to see what the seller has to say about that. You never know, they might take it. And you're true. You never know. You don't know what a seller's reason is. They may take anything. However, I say however, because what happens when you give a lowball offer, especially if you know that property is priced within the range where it should be priced at, instead of negotiating from the buyer side and the seller side to come to an agreement on where that property might land at, if negotiation is something the seller is willing to entertain. When you're making a $51,000 offer on a property that's priced fairly well, a seller may get offended. And I have seen it time and time again from my sellers that I have, where we get a really low ball offer and some sellers just shake it off and say no, just tell them no, we're not going to entertain that. That's just, something that we're not even going to entertain. If they want to come back with a serious offer, we're willing to entertain any serious offer they may want to make. But then we have other sellers, and this is what they say. Nope, nope, not going to counter offer, not going to offer them to send another offer. Nope, don't want to have nothing to do with them. Nothing. Because what happens is they get offended. Now, do they have a right to be offended? Well, a seller has a right to be offended. A buyer has a right to be offended. I mean, it's not about rights. This is about what happens if the property is priced properly and the market says it's priced properly, and somebody sends in a low ball offer, and what happens to a seller when they see that low ball offer? Because they get excited that they're getting an offer in, and we're excited to get it in. As agents, we're excited to look at it as well. But we know when we get that offer and we see it, we know based on our market information, our data information, our listing information, we know where the price ranges fall for that property based upon that property. And we know immediately that when we send that to the seller, that, they're probably going to say no. But our obligation, our duty as an agent is to still send it to the seller. Again, you never know what a seller may say. Things may have changed since the last time you talked to them as their agent. So you never know. But beyond that, you still have that duty to send every offer that you get for a seller as an agent. That agent has a duty to send the seller that offer. The seller has the right to say yes or no. It's as simple as that. The buyer makes the offer. The agent receives the offer for the seller. The agent for the seller sends the offer to the seller. The seller has the right to say yes or no. That's just how it works. It's really that simple. But sometimes sellers can be offended by the lowball offers. And I have had sellers before where somebody was trying to see what would stick that way. Like if they did $399 and it was $450, they wanted to just see maybe what the seller would say. And I've had sellers that were so offended that when I told the agent no, that the seller would not entertain that offer, and the agent would call me back and say, well, hey, or do they want to make a counter offer, or, we'll send a counter offer in. And I'll ask the seller again, do you want to make a counter offer? They want to send another offer in, and they say no, no, no. We don't want to entertain another offer from from that buyer. And so I have to relay that information to the other side. Now, sometimes it works out. Sometimes, most of the time, I should say, we can kind of, if you're really, a people person, so to speak, and you really know how to talk to people, and especially when we're talking about sellers, because that can be really sensitive for a seller. An agent's going to try to smooth it over and just kind of work with the seller to maybe get the seller to look at it a little bit differently, to look at it from the buyer side and maybe what the buyer's trying to do. And sometimes we can get it to the point where we can say, okay, well, we'll make a counter offer, and maybe we'll do 440. Maybe we'll counter offer to 440. So, there's different things that you can do to kind of, smooth that over and try to get a seller to make that counter offer, or to go back to the agent and say, look, the seller, didn't like that offer. They felt like that wasn't a serious offer. If your client would like to make a serious offer, the seller would be willing to entertain that. So we do have, that does happen a lot where that does happen. But however, sometimes once a seller is offended by a really lowball offer, they don't want to have anything else to do. They don't want to have anything else to do with that. So, just keep that in mind as a buyer. Be willing to take that risk is what I'm saying. Some buyers are willing to take that risk and they're like, if they take it, fine. If they don't take it, fine. That's okay. Again, I have seen where those offers for a property where the property may be a little bit overpriced to begin with, and you may go in a little bit lower than what you normally would on a property. But because of the property itself, it may not justify, it may justify going in at a lower offer and maybe kind of working towards what the property value, what the marketable value may be at that particular time. But that's something really important to keep in mind is about, when to make offers. Another thing is I get a lot of questions from buyers and sellers as well about seller concessions. And we are seeing more seller concessions in the offers that are coming and going in today's market. We're also seeing a little bit more incentive, like we may see like a home warranty incentive, something like that as well, to kind of, give the buyers a little something. You know, sellers oftentimes, they're not actually opposed to doing some type of concession for closing cost or like if it needs new carpet replaced or whatever. But you have to remember if you're looking at maybe the countertops in the kitchen need updating, or perhaps the carpet in the bedrooms needs replacing. You have to remember that from a seller's perspective, they don't know what your taste is. And they don't know, you may have the most expensive taste. And for you may go into a flooring store and you may pick out the highest quality product they have in the store is what you may want to replace in your flooring for your bedrooms that has carpet. Same way, if you're picking out a countertop, you may pick out the most expensive countertop they have in the store. And realistically, a seller isn't going to pay for your taste in a home. They're going to pay something towards what would be considered maybe a normal type of replacement for carpet or a countertop or something like that. So keep that in mind. It may be with your taste, it may cost $25,000 to replace the countertop in the kitchen and replace the carpet in the bedrooms. But looking at it realistically from a seller's point of view, they may not go in and buy the cheapest thing that's in there to replace that with. And when they're looking at giving a concession for that, they're going to try to come up with something that's going to be pretty reasonable to them for what they think as far as what a concession would be for that. So keep that in mind. I can't tell you how many times, though, that I have known of sellers that even before we have the listing appointment, they go in and they replace the countertops, they replace the carpet, they may put new flooring down in there. Their taste that they have and the grade that they choose isn't pleasing to some buyers, and it turns some buyers off. I have seen houses where, they were okay. They're like, that's okay. We're going to change that out anyway. It doesn't really matter, what it is down on the floor, what the countertop is in the kitchen. And those things that the seller paid for before listing the property, this particular buyer or buyers, I've seen it more than once, actually tear it out and replace it with what their taste is. And sometimes it could be that a seller puts in a good grade of flooring, they put in a good grade of countertops in the kitchen, but it's not to the taste of a particular buyer. So sometimes, a seller may choose to say, okay, I would rather give a concession, and they can use it any way they want to. They can use it against the purchase price. They can use it against, the having a credit on the closing statement. They can use it any way they want to. It's up to them. However, keep in mind, on the buyer side, if you are a buyer and you're getting a loan, your lender may have a cap on what that concession can be. So it's always good to ask your lender, your mortgage officer, hey, if I ask for seller concessions, what is the maximum amount that I can ask for? Because whatever that maximum amount is, that's all that any seller is going to be able to give as far as that goes. Okay, so we've covered that. Those are just all important things to keep in mind, especially in today's market. And I know that today's market with the housing industry, with how the mortgage rates have been all over the place, like we're talking about, this is what is it today? Today is April the 17th, 2025. And so like last week, the interest rates went way back up not way over, but they did go over 7%. But they had been down lower than they had been in a long time, in several months. And then they went back up, that kind of gave the market a little bit of instability as far as buyers go. But then again, this week we're seeing the interest rates come back down. They're back down below the 7%. We're hopeful that they'll continue to decrease a little bit. I actually haven't checked today to actually see what the 30-year mortgage rates are doing. And keep in mind, as we're talking about mortgage rates, your rates for your loan on your home that you're buying is going to be determined depending on what type of loan you're getting. Are you buying a home that's going to be your primary residence? Are you buying a home that's going to be your second home? Maybe it's just going to be an investment property and you have a portfolio of investment properties. There are all different types of loans that are available to a buyer depending on what their particular purchase is going to be. And remember, that purchase is going to determine, again, it's going to have a factor in what your interest rate is going to be for your loan. Okay. So anyway, I hope that going into this beautiful day here in Brunswick County, North Carolina, I hope that you also, no matter where you're watching from, that you have a good day, that you have a wonderfully blessed day. Again, my name is Sue Singleton with Carolina Coast Homes Real Estate here in beautiful southeastern North Carolina, servicing mostly Brunswick and New Hanover counties here in southeastern North Carolina. So if you have any questions about any of the information that I've talked about today, remember, this information is based on my opinion from what I'm seeing in the market currently. And I just wanted to share that because these are things that are coming up over and over and over again for many, many sellers and many, many buyers that I am seeing and talking to along my day as I go about my days here as a real estate agent. All righty. So all of my contact information is below. Make sure to reach out by phone, text, or email if you have a question, if you'd like more information. I just want to remind you, if you like this video, if you like the content of this video, make sure to like and share this video. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so that you'll get notifications whenever a new video is posted. Okay, I will talk to you later, and until then, you have a blessed day. Take care.